Let's talk the media, and I want to talk CBS once again because I think Walter Cronkite is turning in his grave right now. And I don't say that lightly because what we're watching at CBS News right now, it's not, I don't think you can just say it's a programming misstep or it's a bad weekend experiment. It feels like something more serious than that. Like the network is drifting. Like there's confusion. They can't find their footing. Like a network that doesn't quite know who it's speaking to anymore. And I'm just going to say this up front. I've gone through this before. And if they continue down this road, it's not going to work. I don't believe it's going to work. They're never going to get the conservative Fox News viewers. It doesn't work that way. And it takes a while. In order to do that, you've got to be all in. Like every part of the day has to be that, or it's not going to work. And so when a place like CBS News loses its sense of self, that should worry anyone who still believes journalism matters. Okay, so look, you're looking at the ratings there. Bari Weiss Town Hall with Erika Kirk saw ratings plummet as CBS News editor-in-chief debuts on screen. Okay, so and this is the New York Post. This is a conservative newspaper saying this. So, take that for what it's worth. But so let's talk about this town hall. CBS News put real weight behind this town hall. It wasn't just a throwaway. This was positioned as a statement, like a moment, a signal about the future, of the network. And so, but here's the thing where I say this is maybe a miracle and they can pull it off. But instead of sparking engagement, it landed with a kind of a hollow thud. Okay. And I don't think there was like outrage. I don't think there was even backlash around it. It was just like people going, I'm not interested. It was just disengagement. And that is the worst. Disengagement is deadly in television. People didn't lean in. They didn't argue about the next morning. They didn't rush to defend it. They just didn't show up. And you know what? They were just like, I didn't watch that shit. And so the silence is telling, or the silence is yelling everything. CBS News has always been about something, I think, that is very specific. Remember, it's the Tiffany Network. It's the home of 60 Minutes. Like one of the longest running and most popular long form news shows ever. Like the Vanguard, like the thing that people look to as an example of what good journalism is. Serious reporting, editorial restraint, letting the journalism lead, not the personalities. But even though they do have good personalities who do it. I mean, look at all the folks who are on there. They became personalities because they were such tough interviewers. So that's the deal it has long had with its audience. And so the problem is that when you turn your core audience off, that core audience is who you count on to fight for you in bad times and to be there. But if you don't deliver for them, if there's no payoff, they're not showing up. So this town hall broke that deal for, I believe, their core viewers. It felt less like journalism and it's more like their positioning. People can see that. Again, I've been through it. Less like reporting and more like a brand exercise. You feel me? And audiences can feel that instantly, even if they can't quite articulate why. People are like, something is different. I don't know what's there. It just seems like, what is going on? Like, where are the people? Where are the people I remember? Like, what is happening here? Why are they allowing these people why are they giving them a platform? Why are they, you've heard it. This is not the first time this has happened. So it felt like CBS News is trying to audition for an audience that doesn't actually watch CBS News, while assuming its existing audience would just go along with it, go along with the ride. No, that is a very, very dangerous assumption, because when viewers feel like a network is no longer speaking to them, they don't complain anymore. Like the network doesn't really hear the complaints. I hear the complaints all the time in the streets, because I'm out here in these streets, right? They don't write letters like they used to. They don't organize boycotts most of the time, unless it's something that is just egregious, like Jimmy Kimmel, right? Where the whole network hasn't changed this thing, but it is bending the knee to someone that they feel is like, wait a minute, this is wrong. All right. So, but in this case, it's even worse for CBS, I believe, because people are just leaving. That's what's happening here. The problem wasn't the conversation itself. It was the context of the conversation. Why this? Why here? Why from CBS News? CBS News is not Substack. And I say that because, the person who's leading it now made her bones, at least recently, in Substack. It's not a podcast feed. It's not a personal brand platform. It is supposed to be a public trust, or at least a competent imitation of a public trust. And that distinction really, 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 really matters. So you taking the Tiffany network to something, I don't know, is it a downgrade? I don't know. It's different. I don't know if it's a downgrade. It's different. And it's not broadcast. It's a whole different thing. It's not a network. There is a fundamental misunderstanding at the heart of this experiment, that the idea of ideological posture alone is content. That, calling something contrarian or heterodox automatically makes it interesting. It does not automatically make it interesting. Television audiences do not tune in for posture. They tune in for storytelling, for accountability, for moments that feel necessary, not self-congratulatory. Boring television is still boring television, no matter how loudly it insists that it is being brave. And so right now, I want to talk honestly for a second about on-air presence, because television is a visual, emotional medium, whether people like it or not. And people like personality. They like people who are imperfect. They like people who are messy, regardless. I always say the most successful people in television have major flaws, pretty much, or things that make them unique, like Barbara Walters' voice, or Katie Kirk, like burping on the air, like all just little, the way Howard Cosell spoke, Dan Ratherisms. Like those are people that it's interesting because they're not perfect, but they haven't figured that out yet. I don't know why the executives, for some reason, these new executives haven't figured it out. Maybe they're just too close to the M&A part of it, the money part of it, where they don't understand, where they know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. Flat delivery drains energy. It just does. This isn't about ideologies. This isn't about the left or the right. This is about the basics of television. And so you can't afford a dull moment when attention is fragmenting and competition is ruthless right now. So it's not just me saying that. It's critics across the ideological spectrum notice the same thing. When you have people who agree on almost nothing, agreeing that something didn't work, you should pay attention. Okay? And the criticism, quite frankly, I have to tell you, has been about the person who is running the network, and that is Bari Weiss. This is not personal. I've met Bari. I know her peripherally. This is not personal, but by every person that I have spoken to, said she should have turned this over to a network correspondent that has experience, or network anchor that has experience interviewing people to make it interesting and dynamic. It just was not. It was just bizarre. And all of this talk now from the administration, which, the people who own CBS now are the Ellisons, who are very close to Donald Trump, and they have the MAGA mentality. And Donald Trump and the MAGA folks talk a lot about meritocracy, but they actually don't deliver on meritocracy. So when you have people across the ideological spectrum realizing that and understanding that, I think you need to pay attention. Even people who were MAGA and who supported MAGA and who are conservative are saying the same thing, are really calling it out. More so than anything, more so than anyone, is Candace Owens. Watch.
Despite her sub-average intelligence, she's not interesting. She somehow becomes a chief over at CBS News. Right? This
Pause.
actually, what I'm saying
Now,
about Bari Weiss.
She's being a little personal here, but it's I don't know what it is, but look, just back it up a little bit. But she's she's saying what a lot of folks are saying, even if it's harsh in tone. You get the gist of what she's saying. Go ahead.
Despite her sub-average intelligence, she's not interesting. She somehow becomes a chief over at CBS News. Right? This actually, what I'm saying about Bari Weiss, this gets into Tucker's quote unquote problematic speech. at SAS when he jumped on stage and basically asked that question. How are all of these subpar people becoming billionaires? The rest of us have to work forever. They're not interesting. They're not talented. And they just seemingly are just getting all of this money and opportunities offered to them. This is clearly not a meritocracy that we're living under. It feels more like, and I'm saying this, more like a cartel. Okay, Bari Weiss is actually one of the people that we should study when it comes to being unimpressive and just getting handouts anyways. It's like welfare. I feel like she's on welfare. Like we all have to work and she gets promoted. And she's going to be unimpressive in this clip because that's her default. She can't even convincingly ask the prepared, loaded question that she is going to deliver to Erika.
So, and that is not, like, she's saying it out loud, and others are saying it as well, but just not as directly as her. The deeper issue here isn't one failed town hall. It's what that failure reveals about leadership and direction. Look, criticizing institutions from the outside is one skill, right? And if you're like a pundit and you criticize, like Bari Weiss, criticized the New York Times, she left. She started on Substack, the Free Press, and was very successful at it. Okay. But criticizing institutions from the outside is one skill. Running one is another entirely. The same thing for the owners of such network. Running a broadcast news division requires judgment. It requires understanding of how mass audiences work. It requires respecting the differences between provoking reaction and earning trust. And right now, CBS News feels like it is drifting toward a version of relevance or irrelevance defined by reaction, by annoyance, by congratulating itself for being provocative, rather than asking whether it is being useful, rather than asking whether they're pushing a certain political ideology, or as they have been accused of as well, and especially Bari Weiss, of pushing a certain religious ideology. And that drift doesn't happen in a vacuum, okay? This is where the corporate story comes in right now, briefly, because it matters. So you have all of this going on. You have Paramount, who's the parent company of CBS. They're at the center of a proposed deal involving Skydance, who's led by David Ellison, backed by his father, Larry Ellison. The Ellisons are very powerful, deeply connected in Silicon Valley, and openly aligned with conservative politics and with Donald Trump. And so for a while there was an assumption floating around, and the reporting was that this deal, a deal to buy Warner Brothers, was in the works. Okay, so Paramount bought CBS, and so this new deal to buy Warner Brothers, it was floating around that this deal would somehow sail through because of those political relationships. And now that assumption looks a lot less solid. Warner is telling its shareholders not to vote for that deal, a related deal. Regulators are not rubber stamping things. And it was surprising because we thought that it would, because they're friends with Trump, right? And suddenly the idea that political proximity alone guarantees control over mass media institutions is being tested. And that really matters right now. And imagine if Paramount, who bought CBS, and they're in control of CBS News, and then they buy Warner Brothers, and then they're in control of CNN. And so then you have, and then they also own, if not outright, part of the TikTok algorithm. And then they have, that is a huge consolidation of conservative media. So now the deal, they believe, is that Netflix is going to buy this. All of this matters because the Ellisons they already sit close to enormous informational power through Oracle's role in hosting and securing US TikTok data. They don't control the algorithm now, but they are close enough to the infrastructure that people are asking questions about the consolidation and the influence and the power that's to come whenever that part goes through. And they turn that over from China. And a legacy news organization, adding that into the mix. And the concern is not paranoia. I mean, I think they have a right it's prudent that people are concerned about this. So look, I think that in this is not about censorship. It's not about banning voices. It's about recognizing patterns. So when billionaires with strong ideological commitments move closer to controlling these major media platforms, editorial pressure doesn't always show up as overt marching orders. It shows up as a drift, right? And you see, like, again, reporters, journalists pulling their punches and people showing up. Like, who are they? Why are you having this conspiracy theorist on? Why do you have on this election denier? So it can show up as a subtle recalibration. Programming choices that feel slightly off, then more off, then unrecognizable. And you're like, what am I watching? So that's why this CBS moment matters. Everything that's happening now, because journalism doesn't usually die in one dramatic explosion. It sort of erodes, right? Quietly, one confusing decision at a time, people not following up on questions, one experiment that doesn't quite fit one audience that stops showing up. CBS doesn't need a culture warrior in an editor's suite or role. It does not need to chase relevance by provoking reaction. People already respect CBS and their journalists and their journalism. What it needs is solid journalism. It needs clear judgment and people who understand that television is not about being clever on paper. It's about a connection. You can expand the tent without burning it down. You can challenge assumptions without boring people to tears. And you can, and without insulting them and their intelligence. You can evolve without abandoning the very thing that made people trust you, the very audience that made you successful, made you who you are, made you the Tiffany Network. The danger right now isn't declining viewership or new media or changing habits. The danger is forgetting why your audience came to you in the first place, what they're coming for. Audiences are not confused. They know when something doesn't ring true. And when it doesn't, this past weekend, they sent a message. Not with outrage, but with silence. And silence in this business is deadly. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a show. We're live every weekday at 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern Time with new clips dropping at 2 p. and 8 p. And if you want even more Don Lemon Show content, join the Lemon community. Members get exclusive posts, behind-the-scenes videos, and live chats just for you. So hit the join button or visit our channel page to sign up. Thanks again for all your love and your support, and I'll see you next time.